She just wanted to say thank you with an Easter egg, but she never imagined that it would touch the heart of the coldest businessman in Los Angeles. Hello, my friends and friends. Before starting this amazing story, leave comments from where it's coming from, okay? And remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Camila Reyes didn't make chocolates out of vanity. She made them because somehow that simple gesture seemed to keep everything that hadn't yet collapsed standing. That Thursday morning, the sharp sound of her alarm clock echoed at 5:30 a.m., breaking the silence of the small apartment in Echo Park like a contained thunderclap. She quickly reached out her arm, trying to silence the device before her mother, who was sick and a light sleeper, woke up with a start. She sat up slowly in bed, her feet touching the cold floor, and took a deep breath before starting another day. Come on, Camila. One more day. Just one more, she murmured to herself, her voice still hoarse. The fatigue was old, living in her bones, but her commitment to life and to those who depended on her was stronger. In the dark kitchen, she flicked on the fluorescent light and stared at the small altar of chocolate jars, silicone molds, and ingredients she had prepared the night before. On the wall, a handwritten recipe from her grandmother Rosa hung lightly in the breeze from the half-open window. Today, 8 huevos por lo menos, she whispered softly, repeating the number like a mantra. She put the water in the bain-marie to boil, arranged her apron over her pajamas, and began to chop the dark chocolate with almost surgical precision. The sound of the chocolate breaking into small pieces was her favorite sound in the morning. It was a sound of promise, of transformation. A little later, Pedro Reyes appeared at the door, still in his socks, rubbing his eyes. He was only 16, but his shoulders were already beginning to carry responsibilities that shouldn't be his. You don't even sleep anymore, do you, Camila? He asked, trying to hide how worried he was. I sleep enough to keep going, Pedrito, she replied with a tired smile. Easter is coming. Orders don't make themselves. He took a mug from the cupboard and filled it with coffee. I can help you today, after school. I promise I won't forget. She nodded, touched by her brother's gesture, who, despite his young age, understood everything. Just remembering helps. And take this bread to Mommy, see if she eats something. Please. Doña Elena was in the room, awake but motionless. Since her rheumatoid arthritis had advanced, even holding a cup of tea was an effort. Camila approached gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. Good morning, Mamita. Did you sleep well? Her mother smiled tenderly, even though her face was haggard. With you around, I sleep better. You are my angel, Camila. She held her daughter's hand with fragile, almost transparent fingers. And those chocolate smells that invade the house, they remind me of your abuela. How proud she would be. Camila lowered her eyes, swallowing hard. I hope so, Mom, because today I'm going to do something different. I want to make Easter eggs for everyone at work, even the boss. Doña Elena raised an eyebrow. That man who never looks you in the eye. Camila laughed. That one. Well, do it right, Hija. Maybe he'll learn that people have flavor too. The walk to work seemed longer that morning. On the crowded subway, Camila saw the tired and hurried faces blend together as if they were part of the same machine, all driven by bills, deadlines, and obligations. She carefully held the bag with 2 small Easter eggs wrapped in transparent cellophane with simple blue ribbon ties. One was for Donna Marlene, the cleaning lady who always covered for her when Camila had to leave early. The other was for Javier, the security guard who offered her a ride to the bus stop every night. They were people who, in silence, helped keep her life going. As the tracks shook the train, she looked at the other bag with the egg still unfinished, reserved for someone she would never have imagined including, Adrian Carter. It's just a gesture. He'll probably throw it away, she muttered to herself, trying not to feel ridiculous. Still, something inside her told her she had to do it. The building where she worked in the heart of Bunker Hill was mirrored, modern, and cold. Here, the walls reflected more status than affection. and the silence of the main lobby seemed to amplify any misstep. Camilla arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, as she did every day, and greeted her colleagues at the door with a discreet smile before settling into the reception area. She was wearing her carefully pressed wine-colored blazer and the same black shoes that had accompanied her for the past 2 years, already a little worn on the sides. When she turned on her computer, she began to organize the list of visitors, sort out the badges, and review the pending deliveries. The routine brought her a sense of control that she valued. It was as if, by keeping everything in order at the entrance to Carter Tech, she was trying to keep her own life less chaotic. At 8:42 a.m., the unmistakable sound of the steel elevator rumbled through the lobby. Camilla knew what it meant. She instinctively squared her shoulders and straightened her posture. The doors opened, and Adrian Carter strode across the lobby with the precision of someone who never wastes time. He didn't seem to be stepping on the ground. He seemed to float above it, enveloped in an air of efficiency and distance. Tall, with firm features, a stubble on his face, and a perfectly tailored charcoal grey suit, he had the air of a man who didn't need approval, and who rarely offered more than the necessary glance. "Good morning," he said in a neutral tone, without even turning his head. "Good morning, Senor Carter," Camilla replied, as always, with restrained kindness. But that day, her gaze lingered on his silhouette for a second too long. Not out of enchantment, but because a strange question had arisen and wouldn't go away. Does he know what real chocolate tastes like? As she organized the newspapers on the coffee table, Camilla thought about what the egg meant to her and what it might mean to someone like Adrian Carter. Here was a man who lived in luxury, who ate at Michelin-starred restaurants, who probably received boxes of Swiss chocolates as gifts from international suppliers. What would he do with an egg made by a receptionist? He probably wouldn't even notice, she thought. But then she added with a sad smile, it doesn't matter, because the gesture wasn't about giving back. It was about resisting cynicism. It was about not letting the world harden her, even if no one noticed, even if it was just another discarded package. "I'm going to make it," she said softly, as if making a promise to herself. "And it's going to be the best one ever." And at that moment, between one entry, form, and the next, something inside Camilla began to change, like chocolate that hardens as it cools, firmer, stronger, but still sweet inside. The decision to include Adrian Carter on her Easter gift list seemed foolish at first glance. But that night, when she returned home, carefully took off her shoes so as not to wake her mother and brother, and hung her coat on the same hook as always, Camilla went straight to the kitchen. She was exhausted, but determined. She turned on the soft light on the stove, opened the box of fine chocolates that she kept for special occasions, and began to separate the ingredients. The chef's egg would be different. Not the most flashy nor the sweetest, but the most careful. She would mix semi-sweet chocolate with a touch of Peruvian coffee and candied orange zest, flavors that she had inherited from her grandmother Rosa, who always said, "Chocolate is not to impress, it is to remember," as she stirred the ganache cream until it reached the perfect consistency. She felt a strange pang in her chest. Was it hope? Was it fear of being noticed? Or just the simple desire to be seen as more than just a name tag at the reception? The apartment was asleep, except for the sound of chocolate dripping into the pan. Camilla took a deep breath with each layer she spread, the thermometer in her hands and her heart beating at a slower pace, as if this ritual were somehow an antidote to world weariness. At the table, Doña Elena appeared, supported by her chain, drawn by the sweet smell that filled the air. "Mi niña, are you still doing this?" she asked in a hoarse but curious voice. Camilla smiled. "This is the special one." Her mother approached slowly and sat down, watching her daughter's dedication with teary eyes. "Who is this for?" "For my boss, Adrian Carter." Elena raised her eyebrows in surprise. "The one who calls you only by your last name and never smiles?" Camilla laughed softly. "That's the one. Her mother was silent for a few seconds, then said calmly, "Then do it well. Sometimes those who hide the most are the ones who need something sweet the most." Camilla didn't answer, but continued decorating the shell with fine golden lines. When she finished, she wrapped it with brown cellophane paper and bronze ribbon. Simple, elegant, almost solitary, like him. The next day, the city woke up cloudy. Camilla walked to the subway with the carefully wrapped egg inside her bag. She arrived at the building earlier than usual, her heart racing for no apparent reason. She discreetly handed the eggs to her colleagues and left Adrian's on the reception desk, next to the mail he usually picked up at the end of the day. She didn't expect a response. She didn't expect a thank you. She didn't expect anything. And perhaps that was the most liberating thing. When he passed by, shortly before 7 o'clock at night, Camilla pretended to be focused on her computer. She saw out of the corner of her eye when he stopped for a moment. When he noticed the package, he read the note attached to the ribbon. "Happy Easter, Senor Carter, handmade. C." And then, without saying anything, he placed the egg inside the leather briefcase and went up to the elevator. That was it. No apparent reaction. Not a word. But Camilla felt, somewhere inside her, that that small choice had moved something, even if it was just a millimeter. She had no idea, however, that that very night, in the luxurious and quiet apartment on the top floor, Adrian Carter would unwrap the folder with a mixture of distrust and curiosity. There was something about the simplicity of that packaging that disarmed him. The handwritten card, with firm and clean writing, seemed more genuine to him than any corporate email he had read in the last few weeks. He opened the package carefully, as if the touch of whoever had made it was still there. He broke off a small piece of chocolate and put it in his mouth. For the first second, it was just flavor. But the next second, it was memory. The mix of coffee and chocolate transported him to the old kitchen of his paternal grandmother's house, Donna Pilar, in the Venice Beach neighborhood. It was as if time had stopped there, among copper pots and an old radio playing boleros. He closed his eyes for a moment, and for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel something between longing, tenderness, and a kind of peace that could not be bought with stocks on the stock exchange. Adrian stood for long minutes in front of the marble counter, staring at the broken egg, as if that small chocolate sculpture contained more answers than his strategic reports. He didn't understand why it had affected him so much. It wasn't just the taste, although it was surprising. It was the care, the dedication, the absence of any apparent intention beyond kindness. He felt a twinge in his chest, a kind of silent shame for not having noticed who Camilla Reyes was before. How many times had he walked past her in a hurry, talking on his cell phone, without looking her in the eye? How many other women in that building had greeted him kindly, and he had responded with the precision of a robot? And now, a receptionist with the hands of an artist and a quiet soul had managed to do what no one else could, make him stop, feel, remember, breathe. With the flavors still dancing in his memory, Adrian walked around the room, as if searching for a reason not to give in to the impulse that was growing inside him. But it was too late. He picked up his cell phone, opened the corporate contact app, and typed her name. For a moment, he hesitated. He didn't even know what he would say. After all, what kind of CEO calls an employee in the middle of a holiday to thank her for a chocolate egg? But then, he remembered Grandma Pilar's smile when she handed him chocolates wrapped in aluminum foil, saying, "Lo importante no es el dulce, es el gesto." And without thinking any further, he pressed the call button. The phone rang 3 times. On the other end, a familiar voice answered hesitantly. "Hello? Camilla? This is Adrian Carter." A heavy silence followed those words. You could almost hear her startle on the other end of the line. "Senor Carter, did something happen?" she asked, clearly alarmed. Adrian hurried to explain, feeling for a moment ridiculous for being so nervous. No, no. I'm sorry if I startled you. I just tasted the chocolate you left, and I needed to thank you in person. On the other side, Camilla sighed, the tension slowly dissolving. Oh, you didn't have to. It was just an Easter gesture. I made it for everyone I admire in the office. He was silent for a moment. That phrase, everyone I admire, seemed light, but it touched him deeply. Camilla, he said more calmly, it was more than a gesture. I didn't remember the taste of childhood until today. You brought back a memory I didn't even know I missed. Camilla was speechless. She had never imagined hearing something like, "Oh, that from that man. Thank you, Senor Carter. It's a recipe from my grandmother. I'm glad you liked it." On the other end of the line, Adrian looked up at the Los Angeles sky, covered in heavy clouds, and said something he himself had not expected to say. "You have a gift, a talent that deserves to be seen." Camilla held the phone with trembling hands, sitting on the edge of the bed, while Doña Eleanor, who was watching TV in the living room, turned her head worriedly at her daughter's expression. "Who is it, dear?" "It's my boss." Eleanor frowned but said nothing. Camilla turned her attention back to the call. "It's just a hobby, Senor Carter. I work as a receptionist because I need stability, and I make chocolates to supplement my income. The gastronomy course is an old dream. So why not turn this dream into a business?" he asked, as if throwing a seed into the wind. "You would be successful." "Really?" Camilla laughed, without irony, but with a hint of sadness. "I have no resources, no structure. I can barely keep up with the bills, and my mother's medications consume everything." On the other end, Adrian remained silent. For the first time, he was not thinking about numbers, projections, risks, or metrics. He just thought that that woman had done something to him that not even his consultants could. She had touched a forgotten place. And maybe he wanted to see how far that could go. The next day, the sky over Los Angeles was less cloudy, as if it were quietly reflecting what was going on inside Adrian Carter. He arrived at the building earlier than usual and went straight to his office on the top floor. But for the first time in a long time, he was not greeted by the silence of screens and spreadsheets. His mind was filled with the sound of Camilla's voice, the simple words that had pierced his defenses, the vivid memory of the chocolate that still seemed to dissolve in his mouth. As he reviewed documents for a corporate event scheduled for 3 weeks from now, a reception for international investors and partners, something flashed in his mind. An idea, a possibility, and without even asking his events team, he made a decision. If there was a chance to showcase Camilla's talent and at the same time create something memorable for the company, he would take it. That same afternoon, Adrian personally came down to reception, something he never did without an urgent reason. When his colleagues noticed his unusual presence, they began to whisper, but he seemed oblivious. Camilla, focused on organizing the day's correspondence, only noticed his approach when his shadow crossed the counter. "Good afternoon, Camilla." His voice was softer than usual, without the impersonal tone she was used to hearing. "Senor Carter, good afternoon. Is there anything you need?" She tensed slightly, not knowing the reason for his unexpected visit. He smiled sideways, a rare gesture, almost shy. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you. Do you have a few minutes after work? I wanted to discuss a proposal." Camilla's eyes widened in surprise. Of course. Great. Can you come up at 6? Meeting room on the 25th floor? I'll be waiting." And with that, he walked away, leaving Camilla with her heart racing and a sheet of paper clutched between her fingers, trembling slightly. At 6 o'clock sharp, Camilla entered the designated room. It was spacious, with glass windows that offered a panoramic view of the city tinted by the golden hues of sunset. Adrian was already waiting for her, without a suit, just a dress shirt rolled up to his elbows and a lighter expression than usual. "Please have a seat." Camilla obeyed, silently, trying to contain her nervousness. "I'll be direct. We're having an important event in 3 weeks. 100 guests. I'd like you to provide the chocolates." She blinked several times, as if she hadn't understood. What do you mean?" "Your chocolates, Camilla. The ones you make with such care. I want them to be in the center of the event table, and I want the world to see what I saw in that egg." Her heart raced. "But, Senor Carter, I make everything in my kitchen. I don't have the structure for such a production." He nodded. "I figured. So I thought I'd make a personal down payment, an investment, so you can rent a space, buy the ingredients, and hire help if you need it." Camilla felt her throat close up. "But why? Why would you do that?" Adrian kept his eyes fixed on hers. "Because your talent is rare, because I believe in it, and because, honestly, I want to see how far you can go." His voice was firm, but there was something different about it. It wasn't just the voice of a CEO evaluating a supplier. It was that of a man who, for the first time in years, seemed to speak from the heart. Camilla took a deep breath, trying to contain the flood of doubts, fears, and hopes that threatened to overflow. "I accept, but on one condition." He raised an eyebrow curiously. "I want to do everything with the same care as always, no mass production. I want each chocolate to carry the same soul as that egg you tasted." Adrian smiled, and in that instant, the usual rigidity of his face melted away. "That's exactly what I want. Something made with soul." The news of the investment came like a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds. With the advance payment that Adrian had transferred directly to her account, "Consider it a boost, not a favor," he had said. Camilla rented a small, unused storefront near Union Station. It was a modest space that had previously housed a neighborhood bakery, with faded pastel-colored walls and the smell of flour permeating the cracks in the counter. But to her, it was a temple. There, with the help of Pedro and 2 college friends, Camilla spent the week transforming the space into a functional studio. Doña Elena, despite her limitations, insisted on supervising, sitting on a folding chair in the corner, offering suggestions as if she were still at the height of her energy. "Don't forget the cupboard for the dry ingredients, and make sure you keep the refrigerator away from the oven, girl," she complained, with a proud smile on her face. Adrian first showed up at the studio on a Tuesday afternoon, by surprise, with a craft paper bag in his hands. "I brought coffee and cheese bread," he said upon entering, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Camilla, who was wearing an apron and had her hands covered in chocolate, almost dropped the spatula. "Senor Carter, Adrian, you didn't have to." He smiled, observing the space with genuine interest. "I wanted to, and I also wanted to see up close how the magic is born." His eyes roamed over every detail. The freshly painted shelves, the utensils still out of place, the boards with sketches of flavors and presentations taped to the wall. "This looks like you," he commented, almost without realizing it. "Simple, but full of soul." Camilla blushed slightly, hiding her face behind a bowl. "It's all still improvised, but it'll be ready in time." Adrian looked at her seriously. "I had no doubts." In the following days, the pace of work increased. Camilla created a special line with 6 different flavors, testing combinations with the precision of an artisan and the intuition of someone who carries memories in each recipe. Passion fruit with white chocolate, pistachio with fleur de sel, coconut with lemon, caramel and orange blossom. Each truffle was designed as a unique piece, and even with the pressure of the deadline, she refused to rush the process. Adrian called almost every day to check on the progress. But the calls, little by little, stopped being just about chocolate. They started to be about life, about losses, about Italian grandmothers who left handwritten recipes, about parents who left too soon, about how the world sometimes seems too big for those who try to start from scratch. Camilla felt, with each conversation, that the wall between them was starting to crack, not hard, but steadily. On the Friday of the week before the event, the unexpected happened. the supplier of the Belgian chocolate that Camilla had been using since the beginning, announced that the delivery would be delayed. It was the basis of most of her recipes, and without it, she wouldn't be able to meet the deadline. Camilla panicked. She locked herself in the studio's bathroom, sitting on the cold floor, trying to control her breathing. I can't do it. I can't fail him. Pedro knocked on the door worriedly, but it was Adrian's calm voice on the phone that got her out of there. Breathe, Camilla. Tell me the name of the supplier. Hours later, he showed up at the studio with 3 large boxes of bars of the same chocolate, purchased by a French partner of Carter Tech. How did you get this? She asked, astonished. Have you forgotten who you're dealing with? He replied, half serious, half amused. And when she opened one of the boxes and saw the bars perfectly aligned, she felt tears well up in her eyes. It wasn't just about chocolate. It was about someone who finally believed in her without conditions. The weekend before the event was a whirlwind. Camilla worked late every day, taking on double shifts between molds, fillings, presentation tests, and meticulous adjustments. With each finished truffle, she attached a small label with the initials CV, discreet but firm, like a signature of someone who was beginning to recognize herself as the author of her own destiny. Adrian visited the studio almost every night, always bringing something, a hot drink, a comforting meal, a word of encouragement. Have you tried the passion fruit one yet? Not yet. Then today's the day. Sit down. Camilla was starting to get used to his presence there, shirt tucked in, sleeves rolled up, asking questions that no investor would ever ask. Do you feel afraid when you cook? Every day. That's good. Why? Because only those who care are afraid of failing. One of those nights, it was already past 9 when Adrian arrived with a crumpled paper bag. I thought you hadn't had dinner yet, he said, holding out the package. I brought cheese and walnut ravioli from the restaurant on the corner. Camilla smiled, taking off her gloves with their fingers full of chocolate. You got it right. And then he took a small blue velvet box out of his pocket. I brought this too. When she opened it, she saw a brooch in the shape of a cocoa. Bean, golden, delicate, with a subtle shine on its curves. A gift? She asked, surprised. Adrian shook his head seriously. A charm for the event, to remind me that even when everything seems small, there can be greatness inside. Camilla took a while to answer. She touched the brooch carefully, as if it was something alive. You didn't have to. I wanted to. And at that moment, something enveloped them. A silence. A certainty that no longer fit between the lines of what they were saying. It was Pedro who broke the mood, entering carrying boxes with ready-made bows. Adrian greeted him with a handshake and a "good night, partner," that brought a smile to the boy's face. But the look Pedro gave his sister didn't go unnoticed. When Adrian said goodbye, wishing a good night with a touch on Camilla's hand that lasted a second longer than necessary, Pedro waited until the door closed to comment. He looks at you differently, you know? Camilla, still holding the brooch in her hands, looked away. Pedro, you don't need to say anything. Just be careful. You're too special to let someone confuse you. She nodded, but her heart was restless. She knew there was something growing there. It wasn't an illusion. It was a real connection, made of small kindnesses and truths shared over coffee and a ganache. That was what scared her the most. The possibility that it wasn't just a business deal. The day before the event, the studio was silent. The helpers had already left. Doña Elena was sleeping at home. Pedro was reviewing materials for school. Camilla was alone, finishing the last of the chocolates, when she heard the doorbell. When she opened the door, she found Adrian wearing a light coat and his hair slightly disheveled by the night wind. I know it's late, but I thought you shouldn't be alone today. Camilla stepped aside. He entered. The lighting was soft. The aroma of chocolate and vanilla filled the air. Is everything ready? He asked, looking at the carefully stacked boxes. Almost everything. All that's left is to pack the pistachio ones. He approached, took a chocolate and put it in his mouth with his eyes closed. "This isn't food, it's poetry." She laughed. "Poetry is tiring." He looked her in the eyes, serious. "You turned a simple project into something that has soul, and that is rare." The silence between them this time was not empty. It was loaded with meanings that words could no longer express. The ballroom at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, illuminated by golden chandeliers and surrounded by glass walls overlooking Beverly Gardens Park, seemed to belong to another universe. There, businessmen, diplomats and investors circulated among trays with glasses of sparkling wine and conversations in several languages. In the most exquisite corner of the room, a 6-meter table, all in dark wood and white marble, had been dedicated exclusively to Camilla's creations. Hand-carved bonbons, colorful truffles with edible gold dust, mini chocolate sculptures in the shape of technological gears, a subtle homage to Carter Tech. Each piece brought a precise balance between art and flavor. Camilla, dressed in a discreet navy blue suit, her hair tied in a low bun and a cocoa pin on her lapel, observed everything in silence, trying to control her breathing. This was her work here. This was her soul. And for the first time, she felt that the world saw her. Adrian arrived punctually, but when he saw her from afar, he took a few seconds to approach her. Not because he hesitated, but because he felt, perhaps for the first time, that she was not there as an employee. She was there as a creator, as an artist, as an equal. When he met her, he bowed slightly and whispered in a low voice, "Just for her, you look stunning." Camilla smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you for everything." He extended his arm to her and said, "Today is your stage." And she walked in with him. They chatted with guests, explained the inspirations, behind the flavors, and answered questions in Spanish, English, and Italian. A renowned chef asked if she had a physical store. A food influencer asked for her contact information. Camilla wrote down names, trembling inside, without letting it show. When Adrian lightly squeezed her hand, he simply said, "This is just the beginning." The buzz of the evening increased when an elegant, silver-haired woman entered the room. She wore a pearl-gray dress, a discreet pearl necklace, and a posture that demanded attention. Helena Carter, Adrian's mother, was known in the business world for her frankness, elegance, and emotional reserve. Camilla recognized her from afar, felt Adrian's tension as he approached to greet her, and knew there was history there. "Mom, I want to introduce you to someone." Helena raised an eyebrow. "Someone?" Adrian led her to Camilla. "This is Camilla Reyes, the chocolatier responsible for all of this." Helena looked at her, analyzing every detail, from her posture to her brooch, as if she were evaluating much more than what she saw. "Did you create these wonders?" she asked, taking a pistachio chocolate with fleur de sel. "Yes, ma'am. It's an honor to meet you." Helena bit into it delicately, letting the flavor spread. And then, with a soft expression, she said, "This reminds me of your grandmother's chocolates, Adrian, the ones she made in Venice Beach." Her son nodded, looking at Camilla as if in that moment she had also touched his past. The conversation with Helena lasted longer than Camilla had imagined. Adrian's mother revealed herself to be a chocolate lover, especially the artisanal versions that reminded her of her son's childhood. She spoke of Tuscany, of her grandmother Pilar, of how her grandson hid chocolates in his school drawers. Camilla listened attentively and gently, responding with humility and grace. When Helena commented, "You should open a store. Chocolates like that don't belong in anonymity," Adrian intervened. "We've already been talking about it." Helena looked at him, surprised, and then back at Camilla. There was something in her gaze that Camilla couldn't decipher. Something between curiosity, appreciation, and perhaps relief. "Well, now I understand why you've been different, Adrian." He just smiled. He didn't confirm, he didn't deny, but he held Camilla's hand under the table for a moment, and in that gesture, the silence said it all. As the last guests began to say goodbye, the room was slowly emptying, but Camilla's table still attracted curious glances. Only 5 chocolates remained, not because the others had been left over, but because she had reserved them herself, as small reminders of what she had achieved that night. Camilla was sitting in a more discreet corner, shoes in her hands, her tired feet resting on a folding chair, her eyes watching the slow movement of the waiters dismantling arrangements. Adrian approached silently, sat down next to her without saying anything for a moment. "You, a one," she smiled, tired but with her eyes shining. "I think so." He looked at her for a few seconds before speaking in a low voice. "You won everyone over, including the most difficult person to please in this city, my mother." Camilla laughed. "She's intense. She's selective, but she saw in you what I saw from the first taste." She looked away for a moment, touching the brooch on her coat. "Adrian, I don't know what all this means yet. I'm happy, of course, but I'm also scared." He nodded, respecting her time. "And you should be. You turned a huge page in your story today, but if you'll allow me, I wanted to continue reading this story with you." The silence that followed was heavy, but light. Camilla searched for words to respond, but her tiredness and racing heart were confusing everything. "Can we talk calmly tomorrow?" she asked. He smiled. "Of course, but not about chocolates." "Not just about chocolates," she corrected him, and they both laughed, in complicity, aware that something had changed profoundly there. The next morning, Camilla woke up late, wrapped in her blanket and feeling bittersweet, as if her dream had come true. Pedro welcomed her with an improvised breakfast in bed, with toast and a note. "The best chocolatier Los Angeles has ever seen." She smiled, excited, but her heart was beating faster for what was yet to come. Around 2 p.m., she arrived at the Carter Tech building and went straight to the meeting room. Adrian was already waiting for her. There were 2 envelopes on the table. The first is a formal contract, 1 year of supply for company events. Camilla took the envelope with trembling hands. And the second, he looked her in the eyes. "It's not an envelope, it's an invitation." She waited. "To dinner. Not as a caterer, not as a hostess, but as the woman who inadvertently showed me that I could still feel." Camilla was silent, but her smile spoke for her. "Only if I can make dessert." Adrian smiled too. "That's the perfect condition." They left the room side by side, unhurriedly, as if time was finally on their side. Camilla knew that the future still held uncertainties. Bills to pay, her mother's health, the anxiety of a new business. But she also knew, with the same certainty with which she tempered chocolate to exactly 31 degrees, that something inside her had changed. It was no longer just about surviving. It was about building, choosing, sharing, and Adrian, with all his armored structure, seemed ready to do the same. As she walked beside him, she thought of her grandmother Rosa. Chocolate is not to impress, it is to remember. And there, between discreet glances and simple gestures, she understood. Love didn't need to impress either. It just needed to be made with soul. A few weeks later, the old, pale-walled studio smelled new. Not just the rich aroma of melted chocolate, but the scent of something more subtle: freedom. Camilla now divided her days between producing the growing orders and planning. Her own brand, a small boutique of artisanal chocolates called Races, in honor of the women who came before her. On the walls of the new space, photos of her grandmother Rosa and mother Eleanor shared space with handwritten recipes and shelves of carefully arranged chocolates. There were hard days, sure, body aches, sleepless nights, fear always lurking in the shadows of success. But there was also something new, a calm certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be. Adrian was still CEO of Carter Tech, but no one there saw him as the man who never smiled anymore. He started arriving late and leaving early. He swapped meetings for long lunches in the studio. He asked questions about ganaches and frostings with the same seriousness with which he used to analyze reports. Camilla laughed at this sometimes. You still seem from another world, but at least now you taste the chocolate before judging. And he would answer, with a twinkle in his eye, it's just that now I know how to recognize what is made with soul. They were still walking carefully, step by step, like someone who learns to trust after walking alone for a long time. But they were walking together. Between one batch and another, between a coffee bonbon and a lemon truffle, they were building more than a business. They were shaping a new story, made not of haste but of patience, of attentive looks, of true listening, like well-tempered chocolate which needs the right amount of time to reach the perfect shine. And it all started with an Easter egg, a simple gesture, discreet packaging, a note signed in firm, hopeful handwriting, because sometimes all it takes is a taste to make someone remember who they really are. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel, leave a like and activate notifications so you don't miss future content. Hasta luego.